Stencil tutorial with practical example for beginners. Welcome to Coding Locker, guys, and this is another part. We will continue. We are actually continuing from a series, right, where we are learning our stencils. So in previous parts, we have created one component. We have seen that how this component can be reused to different applications, and we have provided some sort of styling and provided structure that we have now clear roadmap what we want to achieve. Just to summarize, on a click of stencil, I want to load this stencil wrapper. Whereas on click of this get stencils users, I actually want to fetch some data from the API. Same is for the React one. Okay. For this part, we'll focus on three things. One is prop, one is a state, another one is watch. Also, we'll do some sort of button styling as well as a part of this video. So let me begin with the prop one. So this is the code, right? You must be following the playlist. If you are following the playlist, you should be having the code with you. And if you do not have, then do not worry. I have all the code available at GitHub location. You can directly copy the code and clone it, and you can start even with the part third. Okay, so this is the prop symbol, and you have to import this from the stencil core. So when we use this prop, so whenever we want to pass the data from outside of the component, then we make use of this prop keyword, which is provided by stencils, right? So let me now go here at main content and let's print the name between the h1. I am, and in the curly braces, this dot name. That is all you have to do. Next, go to this index.html and provide the name here, maybe coding locker. Go to this tsx files. So what we have done, this is the prop. We have imported this as a type of string we have initially defined and we are using here. So let's go to the browser and see, do we have the output? We have the output coding locker. Now, one thing with the prop is that although you have defined the prop here, why you have defined? Whenever you want to pass the data from outside. But what if I want to change the value of this coding locker from the component itself? So let's understand what I am trying to say here. So for that, let me create one method which would actually change the name. So for that, let me create this method change states. This will just change the name. This dot name has been updated. Now let me see how we can actually call this method. Now calling is pretty simple and actually the same way we actually do in a React. So go to any button, maybe get stencil or get React user, any button. So what we are saying, on click, call this dot change state and provide this as a reference. Now if this parameter is expecting any parameter, so after the comma you can provide those parameters as well. As of now, we do not have any parameter. So we have updated the name on click of this button. Let it compile and go back to our browser once again. Let's refresh this at first. Okay, now let's click and see what happens. It was the button, right? No, this was the button. Okay, see, name has been updated. Since the name has been updated, but at the same time we get some warning. It says prop name on my card is immutable but was modified from within the component. That means you should never modify at prop keywords, right? The purpose of at prop keyword is just when you want to get the data from outside of the component. But still, if you feel like that, no, I still want to actually update my prop keyword from inside the component as well. So there is a special keyword which stencil provides. So you have to wrap this with this mutable true. That means you are telling the stencil that yes, please be aware or be ready that I can change the name from inside the component as well. See, name has been updated, but this time we do not have any error. So this is about the prop keyword. Just one more thing about the syntax. So let's suppose if your name is camel case like username. So how do you use this? Simply like this and like this. But in case of index.html, you cannot write like this. You have to do like this, user hyphen name. and similarly you have to update here. So if you now refresh, we should see the same output. Let it refresh. We have username here, username here, and we have passed the value in same manner as well. Let it refresh one more time. Yeah, here we are with the name. And if I change, it is still working for me. Now, next property is the state property. Now, what is the use of the state property and when we use this? So, whenever, just let me enter a syntax here at first. So, this is the state. And again, if you want to use a state, just import it from stencil.core state and you have the state data. So, state is whenever you are changing anything from the component inside the component, right? So, let's suppose you have some API data which you are getting from any microservice or from any web API, and then you are rendering that API data inside any of your component, right? Any of the part of the component. So what you want? You want to re-render the component. That means you want to show the updated value to the user, and that's where we use this state method. So whenever data is getting updated in the state one, then you would notice that the render method would be called once again, and it would update the data. So this is not like always you create a variable with the state. So it's a good practice to avoid using it if you know for sure that the value will not change or that it does not need to trigger or re-rendering. That's an important line. If you know that it will not be rendered, then instead of state, you will simply create a simple variable, right? Any type of boolean variable or whatever the variable. State will be used only when you want to re-render the things. So now let's see in practical. So as of now, I am going to do it with the like this dot API data equals to, we have data from API. We'll see later on the actual data. Right now, let's use this dot API, and maybe in the h5 tag and paste it like this dot API data. That is all, and yeah, that is all. Let's go back to the our browser, refresh this, and see what happens. Let it refresh. Where do we have the API data? Not now. Let me refresh one more time, maybe. Okay, sorry, we have not clicked on the button. So let me click on the button so that we can see the data. This one, here we have data from API. Now, when I said that it would re-render the component, so let's prove this. So in the future upcoming videos, we will go through with the lifecycle methods what React provides, but just as of now, focus on this component will update. This method will be executed whenever it knows that yes, I need to render something or re-render the component. So let it refresh once again, and we'll see that are we getting the console.log whenever we update anything for this dot API data. Just let it load, and I have to refresh sometime. Click on this get create React users and see component will update. This is called whenever I click on this one. So this is actually re-rendering the component. So that is about the state. And one thing I already mentioned you, that if you do not want to load the component, then you will not create any state variable. Rather, you would simply create any variable like this, maybe show card, which is push sorry, which is type of boolean, and maybe you can update this like this dot show card to false. You can also set the value to true at first as well, right? And maybe you can make use of this show card here in the if condition, so that if you want to show the card or not. So this time But if you do so, it will not actually re-render the card until it will. Okay, let me show you with an example here. Let me show you with an example. Okay, so you have this show card property, then you are setting this false, right? So let's suppose we are making use of this show card here. So what we are doing here, we are rendering the React content and the stencil content. So let me make one change, create one variable, let content to display. If this dot show card is true, then content to display is a React content. So instead of React content, I'll print this content to display. So let's run this by this. So at first the show card value is true. Since the show card value is true, right, it would update the value content to display the React content, and React content we have all the HTML, and it will render the content to display. Now next, when I'm clicking on the button, on a click of button, I'm updating the value of this dot show card to true. Oh, sorry, to false. Maybe I will add some alert as well. Okay, so we are updating the value of show card here, and what I want, if this show card is value false, then content to display is a false. So I should not see this React one. Let me press a Control S and let's rebuild the application. Actually, let it rebuild automatically. Maybe let me press a refresh here. Okay. Now if I, right now you see we have the rendering of the React one, right? Now if I click on this get React user, it says false. That means the variable value has been set to false. But still we do not have any change in the component. We still see the React. That is the difference I was telling you between the state and between the normal variable. So if I simply just move or make this or decorate this with this state, and what state does, it actually allow whenever any change gets deducted by this variable, so it would automatically update or re-render the component as well. And you must have noticed that the component will also not called, actually was not called. Click on this React now, this time, sorry, this one. Now again we are setting the value to false, and see, this is hidden. This is hidden. That is the difference between these three: prop, state, and actually non-variable. So let it make it, maybe let it be state one, and we'll see. Let me close this and uncomment this one as well. The last thing which I want to show for today's demo is that the watch variable, and that is pretty simple. What you can do, you can add a watch decorator for your name. So this is my username, right? This is your username, this watch handler. And again, if you want to use this watch, you have to call this username and watch handler. So we are actually rendering or watching the new value and the old value. Sometimes we also need this. Let it refresh one more time and click on maybe clear this console. Click on this React. Sorry, I forget. So see, the new value of his name has been updated, and before it was coding locker, which we passed from our HTML, right? So this is all we have. Now let's focus on the little bit styling. Oh, sorry, the structure change. When I click on stencil, I should be able to load the stencil one, otherwise React. Now you are familiar with the state. Now you should be aware that should I use the state one or the normal variable. You know that how do we actually create the buttons as well. So let's do the things now. At first, you have to call this. Let me switch to the code as well. So this is my show card. So instead of the show card, what I have to do, I have to create two more properties, which is the show React tab and show stencil tab. And after that, maybe I can comment out this state, and I can comment out this watch component will update as well. We no longer required now. And after that, on click of this change, no, we do not need. We'll have a play call over here. Then let's create a method. Although now this is just a simple method which is saying if the content is React tab, then this tab has to be displayed, otherwise this, otherwise no tabs needs to be displayed. And we have to call this method from two buttons. One is the stencil one and other one is the React one. So we have one button which is at the here we are button stencil one, yeah, this one. So call this method button stencil. Similarly, call this one as well, and the value you have to provide the React. I have told you that whenever you want to provide the parameters after this from the comma, you can provide the parameters. So on content change, this will happen. Now when you want to call on the click of these buttons, okay, now maybe we don't need this code, this dot show. Let me remove this one. Let me remove this entirely, the logic one, and instead of this I can write like this: let content, if show React tab, then you need to show the React one. If the stencil one, you need to show the stencil one, and here you have to display the content to display. That is all, and you can get rid of that thing. Now what about the watch? It is saying something. Yeah, we don't need this watch. Remove this, Control S, let it compile, come back to our browser, let it refresh. Just ignore since we are making so many changes. Now see, we do not have anything because at top we have displayed both to false, and if we look at the code, it says if both are false, then nothing needs to be shown here. And at the render method you can see neither the show React tab is selected nor the show stencil tab, so content to display is black. Now if I click on this stencil, let me click, just wait for a second. Where is my button on content change? Control F3, here we are, content. If the content is React tab, yes, this is React tab, it should show. Let me refresh one more time. Let me check in the code. Okay, so the problem is we have placed this at the wrong place. So here I have to call this button, and similarly for this as well. And let me paste it here as well. And after this, we should press a Control S, and we should be good. Let me open a browser once again. Let me refresh this one more time. Let it load. Now if I click on stencil, I have stencil. If I click on React, then I have React. Cool. So in the next video, we'll work on at first on the two-way data binding, and then we'll work on this fetching the data from the API. So that is all for today's video. We have seen watch, we have seen prop, we have seen state, we have seen difference between when to use state and when to use a normal variable, and provided some structure to our code.